Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson, you like to needle me about greatest wrestler and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to be too long. Well, happy My World recording day, podcast day. I'm pretty fired up coming off the weekend, but Connie, I may be getting a new moniker, like maybe greatest college football player, video game player ever, or something like that. I'm certainly rising the ranks here in the house. I don't know how your video game coming, but man, that game is hot. I will tell you that my house is. I guess you could just say it's kind of turned upside down. Cody went to bed just a few hours ago, so another all-nighter he pulled. How are you doing, pal?
I'm curious, have there been any follow-ups for NCAA? Where are we at right now?
Well, it has been, and I don't want to jump too far, but since we recorded, we had Nashville Dynamite. We had a training session that kind of completely went off the rails between myself and Jay Lethal and the coachster. I did a baseball appearance in Frederick, Maryland, and man, what a incredible turnout. I love it was really, really cool, and a lot of AEW fans, and love hearing that feedback. That was on Friday. Saturday, me, the whole family, boyfriends of the girls and codes, and we went whitewater rafting down the Ocoee. Man, high spot after high spot after high spot. And then got back late Saturday, Sunday. It was gym, church, and the usual. But Karen got up at 3:30 this morning, Connie. And yes, Cody was still up, and she had to fly to Atlanta with something on her passport. Not expiring, but I don't know, something TSA. Anyway, had to go down there, and she's headed back. So it has been a whirlwind. But to answer your question, we have not had, if you're asking about rematches, that's probably going down tonight. Once he arises from his all-nighter, he'll probably tote an ass whooping, probably about, I don't know, 7:30 or 8.
I'm curious, Nashville to Atlanta. 20-minute flight, 30-minute flight?
It is 34-minute flights, what they usually say, 34-minute flight. So she caught the 5:20 or 5:40, landed, Ubered a passport. She texts me, literally coming out of a meeting, headed to the gym. I'm already headed back. I was just like, wow. But turn around for her. But yeah, got it all handled. She's happy that it's taken care of.
So she had to have an appointment to go across the pond. Is that right?
Well, a couple of international travels coming up.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Forgot about that. Do we want to talk about that, or is now not the time to talk about that?
Not the time. No, it could be a surprise. Maybe not a surprise.
You never know. You never know.
Never know.
Hey, let's talk about what's really important, and that's Cody. Our man Cody, of course, he was up till the middle of the night, all night, getting ready to whoop everybody's ass like he does. I know he overcame his fears and whipped those waves in the Ocoee, and I hear they're thinking about shutting the Ocoee down because Cody beat it so bad.
So we had to split up on rafts. So he was with the oldest two sisters that he, by request. They said when they went into the first class for rapid, the guide saying, okay, up here, and Conrad, I don't know if you've ever been. For those who haven't gone, it's obviously 3 rows, and you have a person on the left and a person on the right. And the guide will call out left 2, and that means the people on the left side paddle twice, or right 2, or left 2, or all, whatever. He kind of calls out the cadence and what you do, and 2 reverse, all this. So Cody's hearing the game plan, and they said he got real quiet. And with a dead look on his face, Jocelyn said, Coach, you all right? He didn't really answer, you all right? And something to the effect, Jocelyn listened to him. And so then they got going. And before long, the guide had him in the back of the boat and said, all right, you're calling the cadence. And Cody was calling 2 left, 2 right, 2 left. Got a little fast, but he had a absolute blast. It was fun. A nice family trip. Go out of your way, folks, as Conrad says. If you want to have a fun and you're kind of, I don't know, you don't even have to be in the Tennessee area, wherever you can, but whitewater rafting on the Ocoee, fascinating day. about 4 hours. So a lot of fun. Turned over a couple of times, and once was on purpose and swam. And
when was the last time you did that? What year? Before 2024?
So we went 2018 out to Jackson Hole and went white rafting, but we kind of took the easy because Karen's grandfather insisted on going with us. What a dadgum trooper he was. So it'd been then, and then it'd been several years before that, but it had been 20 years since I'd done the Ocoee.
I haven't done the Ocoee in 29 years.
No way.
I had to think. I was like, all right, what year was that? It was 95 when I did that.
So, and what's fascinating is that, I mean, and I guess I just kind of, maybe a few adult beverages when I went to the Ocoee last time is that they turn the water off and on. That you know, at night they turn it off and the water goes to the aqueduct and they generate power all night long. But seasonally, they'll flip it and it'll go down the riverbed. But the riverbeds, I can't say they dry up, but he actually said, yeah, they dry up at night, not physically, but they quit the water off. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's where the Olympics, the 96 Olympics were, but it's really a cool, I guess I should call it a course. My gosh, man. Early in the day, our guides were actually late because 3 boats overturned, and up on the upper part of it, it can get a little dicey if you don't follow instructions once you fall out of the boat. So I guess there was a couple of folks that didn't exactly listen to, and you can kind of swim the wrong place, and there's underwater caves and the currents. And if you kind of get caught in the swell, things can turn out pretty bad. But anyway, our guides were late. So, but it was a blast. We had an absolute blast, and Cody whipped the waves. So he's the champion of the waves now.
Well, I hear he's not just whipping the waves. There's rumor and innuendo that this past weekend at a secret location somewhere in northern Middle Tennessee, there was a bit of a dream match that took place. Maybe an impromptu dream match. What can you clarify? What's rumor and innuendo? What really happened, Jeff?
Well, the cameras were not rolling early, and I had a AEW Zoom call on Thursday. This is the day after Dynamite. So I showed up about 30 minutes late. And when I walked in, my partner, Jay Lethal, on a scale of 1 to 10, was about at an 8 in his promo about at Cody. And Cody was at a 9 and pouring with sweat. And they were going at it and said that he'd give Jay 4 strokes, and Jay kept kicking out. And just it actually got really, really ugly. And so I stepped in and tried to calm the matters. And I said, I'll be a special referee. And I told Codes, I said, look, Codes, I've been a special enforcer as of late. I've got this. He went for it. He claims I did a quick count, fast count. Donnie, he got upset. But we had our final match. And tell you what, the ankle lock is almost just, pardon the pun, it's a lock. He put the ankle lock, sat down on it, just like his pop, just like his dad. Once he sat down on it, leg locked it in, Jay had no options.
Oh,
yes. He had no options. Yeah. You My World listeners out there, if you're audio only, go out of your way, go to myworldpod.com, myworldpod.com. Go ahead and subscribe, hit that bell, do what you got to do. But you can see physical, photographical evidence that I reluctantly had to raise the hand of Cody against my longtime partner who I dearly love. But Conrad, can you describe for the audio listeners only, what is Jay Lethal doing right there? Can you see what's he actually doing?
He's agonizing. He's rolling around in pain. He's regretting the very moment he decided to spend time in Middle Tennessee. He doesn't even want to know anybody named Cody. I don't know that he'll be cleared to wrestle this week. I mean, the way he's grabbing that left ankle with both of his hands, the grimace on his face. I mean, I would say he's selling to the top row, but this is a closed set. This isn't selling. This is real life. Cody has dropped the hammer. I don't know that Jay Lethal will wrestle again. We may have to do a letter writing campaign, sell some friendship bracelets. I just hope he's okay. Maybe Maybe he needs one of those Q3 bands to get his shit together, because I'm concerned.
You know, our topic today is Shawn Michaels, and I consider him one of the greatest sellers that he could adapt any style and sell the right way. But man, reminiscent of a Shawn Michaels ankle sell right there was my man Jay.
Except it's not selling. That's real life. I mean, I'm looking at a real life injury there. I mean,
how's the beach going? You down there? You're smiling.
I'm at the lake, Daddy. Look, I got a gray wall behind me. It's a different deal. I'm home. I've been home since Thursday.
Yeah, you moving all around. That's right. That is home now.
Yeah, nice. No more Huntsville. It's just Pensacola and Gunnersville for now. But man, after spending 3 weeks and 2 days down there, I'd be okay if it was just Pensacola. It ain't gonna happen for the wife. She ain't gonna do it.
You know, you sound like
who? Oh,
Jarrett,
the old man, little man.
When he would come home from Sanibel, push his glasses up, get out his tobacco. You know, son, I think it's about time for me to just completely sell everything here in Middle Tennessee and move full time. Is that right, Dad? Yep. That would last about 3 weeks, and then he would get back off of it. But boy, when he would come home, he would be missing him some beach life for sure. I think
it's a hangover period. I do think it's not something you shake off in a day or two. And you know, my wife and I have our anniversary of our first date on Monday. I can tell you this because she won't be listening to this show. She's not on our demo.
Yep.
Bruce Pritchard's Something to Wrestle podcast, the very first episode, dropped on the same day I had my very first date with Megan. So Silva low-key reminded me, hey, next week's episode with Bruce is the 8-year anniversary. And I was like, so then, of course, you know what I did? I was like, so what are we doing for our anniversary?
I love it.
Thanks a lot, Silva. Appreciate you looking out for me.
So Waffle Stomping Silva he's good for a lot of things.
Twice a year, he nails it. And that was one of the times. We're hoping we can nail it today. We're going to be talking about Shawn Michaels. But before we do, we got a lot of things to discuss. I saw a little promo over the weekend. There's a fella running around talking all kinds of trash about how he's going to take you out. I know there's a big event coming for Shoes Baseball, and people are saying that they're going to inflict damage on Double J. There's a big battle royal. What the hell's going on with Shoes Baseball, and who's gunning for you now?
Baseball.com, no, Capital City Clash. I cannot believe I did a baseball appearance Friday up in Maryland, and I was talking to the GM up there. Just kind of, we were swapping maybe some promotional tactics, all this. And when I went into, we're having a wrestling event, Capital City Clash. We're going to set the ring up on home plate. We have our title sponsor, Big Dog Construction. Conrad, I don't know if I've gone into detail of that, but we have a 20-man Robin Roberts, that's the name of the stadium, Robin Roberts Rumble. We're also going to have our version of hardcore tables, ladders, and chairs, but the construction is they're the title sponsor, but they're going to build some stuff and we're going to tear it down, and they say they can remodel it and put it back together. But it is a huge community event. Our Shoes Baseball, the games are rocking and rolling. The bobblehead night we just had, and it's the community continues to just embrace us, and we're very, very grateful for that. But the event, we're going to make our final announcements and the completed card in the next couple of weeks. We're trying to figure out how we're going to do that, maybe a certain rollout, if you will, in town. But yes, we are super excited. Very grateful for the sponsors coming on board. They're the ones that actually make all this happen. So, yep, there is going to be some ass whooping going on. And my man, Colt Cabana, who is a Illinois native, is going to be a part of it. And he is, I'll just say this, and we'll talk about it. The event is Saturday, September the 21st. Old Colt's got something up his sleeve, Conrad, that I think you'll like. So I'll share with that at a later date.
Well, I can't wait to learn more about it. For all the information and to get tickets yourself for your family, go right now to shoesbaseball.com. Jeff, I want to talk about Shawn Michaels, but before we do, man, last week was a big week. AEW found themselves in Nashville, Tennessee at the former Bridgestone Arena, or maybe it still is. Is it called Bridgestone still?
Bridgestone, yeah. Soul May Center is what it was. It's been 2 or 3 names, but yeah, it's still Bridgestone.
So it was a big show because it's blood and guts, and it's basically a modern version of War Games, if you will. Lots of violence, a mouthful of thumbtacks, some real craziness. But the thing that jumped off the page to me was a backstage segment that I don't know we were supposed to see. A conversation between yourself and Bryan Danielson. Of course, part of that aired on television, but the extended cut is on YouTube. And I just got to know, like, what can you tell me about where things stand with Bryan Danielson and what all happened last Wednesday?
Well, Conrad, our Marward listeners, this is kind of a peeling the layer of the onion back. Bryan's health, I'll say this. I think he is literally, and I say this is a shoot brother, as they say, but legitimate. He is in a tug of war in his brain. I think his wife, and I think, without saying it, but I think the kids want dad at home much more. And I think Bryan, I still consider him, I know I don't even want to say on the tail end it, but he's been in his prime a while. And so he might be looking at his mortality, and that is an uncomfortable feeling. I know at this stage of my career, Conrad, I am grateful, and I don't say on borrowed time, knock on wood, but I know the opportunities for a guy like me don't come. It is what it is. I'll say that. But for Bryan, I think in a lot of ways, the mortality of his career of performing at the highest level, the self-doubt, and folks, this is about as real as it can get. And look, I've been around the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and I've been around Lawler. I've been around a lot of guys that have seen them transition. I'll call it from primetime main event to kind of on the tail end, and then they kind of slip away, and then they come back. And I was always amazed at a guy like Terry Funk that did a retirement match, and at the time he felt it, and then would come back and, I don't say reinvent himself, but take a different avenue. I think Bryan, for the first time in his career, is kind of staring down that barrel. For a performer, for a wrestler, specifically for a professional wrestler, it is an uncomfortable feeling. And the first thing that I believe, and the reason I think I can speak so candidly and open, and also I've experienced this, and I've been around others that experienced, and I've talked to other guys that have experienced this. I mean, me and Mick Foley had a conversation, I don't know, a year and a half ago that kind of touched in and out of that. But Bryan, and I've had multiple conversations like this, I almost feel as if, as we stand here today, recording my world, his enemy is not Swerve or the schedule or the grind or anything else other than, I think his biggest obstacle is between his ears.
Yeah, I get that.
And I really do think that I'm trying to encourage him. And we did show some of this on camera, but I'm also in little small talks, whether it's catering or coffee or whatever it may be. I'm trying to encourage him that the obstacle that he may or may not feel, because I tread lightly on this, I hope he hears this at some point, but also I try to encourage him that the obstacle he is feeling right now, the uncomfortableness, the mortality of the peak of his career, that's actually the way. That is the opportunity for him to face his situation head on and bust through it and say, if this is my last shot at truly performing on the highest level that he holds him to, is, damn, dude, make it your best shot. Don't leave anything on the table. And he's just not there yet at all.
We'll stay tuned and see what happens. From what I understand, Bryan Danielson is going to be sharing his feelings tomorrow night on Dynamite. Don't you dare miss it. Tickets are on sale now if you want to be there, perhaps to witness history at AEWTIX.com. I'll be watching, of course, on Turner stations as well. I couldn't help but notice, man, you were in the ring in your hometown on Friday night. Talk to me about the Last Outlaw at the Bridgestone Arena. My goodness, Mr. Nashville, look at you.
I just touched on that a second ago, but Connie, Wednesday night, we obviously in Nashville, Bridgestone Arena was the first time in a lot of years. All my kids were there. Now their oldest is 27. Her boyfriend. Anyway, boyfriends were there, best friends, and it's funny how time flies away. So, I mean, and a lot of we haven't been together at a wrestling show. Some of the girls hadn't been to a wrestling show in a long time. But my sister's son, Jackson Matthews, his dad Tate. But anyway, Jackson is a incoming freshman on Rocky Top, Connie. He's playing for the Vols next year. He was at the event on Wednesday, but it was Jackson's first time to see me wrestle, and he's 18, 19, and Conrad, are you kidding? I mean, it was surreal. I had a blast. I was sore, dude. I was sore for a couple of days on that. But yeah, the rampage. No, oh gosh, what's the title of the match we had? Because it's a really cool concept. It's a great way to use two rings because you're going to have it there for blood and guts, and then when you have to film content for Friday night, you got two rings. So how are we going to make sense of it? And so you basically have two. It was
a Royal Rampage. Royal Rampage.
I almost said Rampage Royal, and I knew that wasn't right. A Royal Rampage. Two basically 10-man battle royals, and you staggered entrances, and then you ended up with the winner in one ring, with the winner in another ring, and they face each other. And Darby is getting the title shot at Arthur Ashe in September. But Conrad coming out and the hometown reception. I'm still kind of shocked. It was special. I will say this. It was special. And, I've never been in the ring with Claudio. Little Easter eggs for me that I'll share with our audience. I've watched Claudio for years. He had already signed with Ring of Honor when I was hopeful to get him to be a part of our team at one time. It just always kind of missed it, but I have admired his work literally for years and years and years. He's a unique skill set, and there are others. But being in the ring with him the other night, I don't know, man. Old babyface Jeff Jarrett, simply irresistible. Conrad, what in the hell is going on in 2024? I have no idea what world we're living in.
Is that, I think I have this right. That's only the second time you've been in the ring with the former Black Taurus, right? And that's the first time in the ring with Ishii?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think so. And Taurus is another guy. I mean, if there is one thing that your wonderful mother took away from Ric Flair's last match, what would it be?
Them boys and them masks or something else.
Okay. And as me and you know at the trained eye, the person that makes that click.
Black Taurus.
Bingo.
I mean.
The base key. It literally is, he's the key.
He's what keeps everybody safe and keeps that thing on track, and a lot of power, a lot of
he is
criminally underrated.
Oh my gosh. He just, hologram on Collision the other night. I don't know if you got a chance to see this, but we were driving home. We were driving home from whitewater rafting, and I had Collision on in the car, and my man Codes was really, you can kind of tell, he was into the match. And I was sitting there watching it, and he was riding shotgun with me, Connie, and actually the Queen, who's her education in professional wrestling, I think by osmosis, her comment was, "Hey, Codes, Taurus is really, really good, isn't he?" And I smiled and looked over my shoulder, and I said, "Well, how about you calling out the bass?" Anyway, he's great. He's very good.
I love the idea of you being in the ring with a lot of guys for the very first time. And there were a lot in that match you were in the ring with for the first time. And a lot of guys, it was the second time. And I just love this career resurgence you've been able to have. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is that just the second time you've wrestled at Bridgestone? I know last year you beat Jeff Hardy in the zombie match, whatever that was. But is this the second time or have you been there more than that?
My man, shout out Mr. Alex Marvez, who can always keep me straight. But I remember a sold out Monday Night Raw in the Attitude Era that I did not wrestle at. So you're probably accurate, Conrad. I don't think I've really wrestled a lot in that arena. Had a lot of TV tapings, I feel like, but like you said, wrestling wise, no.
I just think that's so interesting that this is every wrestling fan knows Nashville's your hometown. That's the big arena. But when you think about it, you were running TNA. You weren't on the WWE train since that building's been there. So yes, you've wrestled at Municipal way back when against Shawn, which we'll talk about later today. And then of course with Rick, and you got a lot of memories there. Obviously the fairgrounds, man, that's the house that Jarrett built. There's no doubt. But Bridgestone, the big building in your hometown once last year. And by the way, you got the dub over Jeff Hardy, went home with some gold that I think Cody still has.
Yes.
And now this double Royal Rampage, this is this resurgence for you has provided this, whatever we want to call this run you're on right now. I know it's filled with gratitude for you, but that you're wrestling in the big buildings in your hometown that I don't know that was even on your like bucket list or something that was important to you, but now it's happening. It's cool.
Conrad, do you know how many times? And the other night they were, we had to, anyway, there was some live event liners we had to do. And I said, hey, what room are we in? And nobody, and then there was a building facilities guy. I said, hey, do you know where this, I said, how far is it past Lexus Lounge? Conrad, I know that arena forwards and backwards and all this because of hockey, not because of wrestling. And yes, I've done Raws and SmackDowns in there and now Dynamites and everything that went with it. But I remember right after I got sober, it was the Preds playoff run, and I got to go out on the ice and welcome and wave the towel and all that. That was like, up until last year, that was my big Bridgestone moment. They're always good to me and announce me, and we have silliness and my man Nash, and we've done all kinds of in-game entertainment, skits and bits and all that kind of stuff. I love the Preds, Sean Henry and team. Nashville, I believe it's taken a while, but I think they now truly understand just how special that organization, how well run it is. The elbow grease they put into educating the Nashville market about hockey. Nashville was not a hockey town. It's a hockey town now. But Smashville was, I got to enjoy my fandom and go to games and down on the ice and go in the locker room and take the kids and all that kind of stuff. So I've been a fan more in that building than I have a performer. That's kind of a unique set of circumstances. So for me to walk the aisle with Karen and get that kind of reception, Connie, it was, yes, never on my bucket list, but buddy, it is going to be I'll certainly say a top 10 moment in my career just because it's hometown.
And of course, we know one of your biggest memories and favorite matches of all time happened in Nashville, but a different building against one of your favorite opponents, Shawn Michaels. He's our topic today. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But before we do, I want to mention that if you've been tuning into the program here recently, you've heard Jeff and myself talk about a fellow that Jeff believes could be maybe, possibly, potentially one of the next big things in pro wrestling. Well, it turns out he already is big. Someone who's really leaned into social media. He's really trying to get himself over. It's our pal, Big Trouble Ben Bishop. And this Thursday over at AdFreeShows.com, AdFree Shows members will join Double J and Ben Bishop live as they're going to discuss the social media impact and just the impact that social media can have for today's talent. Who's doing it the best? And of course, you get to pick the brain of both Ben Bishop and Double J. It happens live this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on AdFreeShows.com. Man, you looking forward to this? You fired up? What are you thinking?
Help me out. And Conrad, maybe Waffle Stomp and Silver may have to chime in here, but I got a question. What level of ad frees do we let people watch these kind of bonus episodes?
All the bonus content starts at $29. The interactive stuff is the top 2 tiers. But yeah, this is going to be something for adfreeshows.com.
Folks, if you're listening to this, if you've ever been, I'll just say kind of on the fence, like, man, is this worth it? And this and that. And, to me, commercial free is a slam dunk for anybody. And I get those comments all the time. We got quite a few Friday we got some ad free community up in Frederick, Maryland in those parts. But anyway, this Thursday is going to be one of those ones that I don't think my man understands, Brother Double B, Ben Bishop. I don't think he understood what he signed up for, because, pardon it, Mr. Jericho, but he's going to be part under the learning tree. I'm coming with my A game. He is not going to know what hit him. I'm just going to say that, because I'm going to be part fun. I'm going to give him a hard time. He's not going to know what version of Double J or The Last Outlaw he's going to get. So, folks, it is going to be 50 minutes, or we may go overtime. I don't know. But, Conrad, this may be an episode that your team, I don't know if Casio or somebody's going to get a bit of it, or whoever produces us, who's running the call. I bet you get a text and say, hey, Conrad, if you got a minute, you may want to watch this. It's going to be fun. I'm ready. I'm ready right now to do it.
Adfreeshows.com is the place to be. Appreciate everybody tuning in for our live studio audience today. I know Alex Wheaton's here and Greg Jacobson's here. Denovius Mack is here. Phil's here. Bobby, Coach Keith, Eric. Appreciate you guys being a part of our live studio audience. Of course, over at adfreeshows.com, not only do you get all of our shows early and ad-free, how about live? You get to be a part of the live studio audience. We've got more than 100,000 hours worth of bonus content, including all the fabulous Starcast stage shows. So if you ever wanted to hear from Sting or CM Punk or John Moxley or the Great Muta or anybody like that, including Jim Crockett. Yeah, Jim Crockett was on the Starcast stage. It's all available now at adfreeshows.com, plus bonus content from all of our hosts and exclusive series you can't see anywhere else, including the brand new one, Learning Lucha with Sam Adonis, who we've been talking about a lot here on the program. And just last week, we announced Pod Ain't Easy. The Godfather has joined us at adfreeshows.com, along with the Monday Mailbag with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick. How about Tully Blanchard? He's doing Tully Vision with us. David Crockett is joining us every month for the book, and so is Lex Luger for Lex Expressed. You get watch-alongs, interactive Q&As, and a ton of bonus content with no commercials. More than 100,000 hours of bonus content at adfreeshows.com. So, Jeff, let's talk a little bit about it. We're talking about Shawn Michaels today. When was Shawn first on your radar? Would you have seen him in the magazines or on AWA TV or working the territories? When do you first remember seeing or hearing about Shawn Michaels?
Connie, that's why you're the best. Literally, when I opened up the research and just trying to, what's the jumping off point? It literally was in there when we were doing, I started, for those that may not remember or recall or knew, a first-time listener, if you will, I started in April of 1986, and I had seen the magazines in my dad's office week after week after week after week and saw that, and, watched WCW, watched, at that time, the WWF on my dad's big C-band and all this. But Marty and Shawn, I missed them, and I had no context at all other than, oh man, the Midnight Rockers work for AWA, and I think they may be coming down. I didn't have no concept that, they were, both the guys were, Marty's a little bit older, but I didn't know it at the time. I thought that we were all about the same age. I thought me and Shawn were really close. He's a year or two older than me. I didn't, no magazines, no tapes, no nothing. It was, hey, this team works for Vern.
So when you're seeing them do their thing, what is your impression of them as a tag team? And did you see any potential as a singles, or did you look up to their style? I mean, they were working a different style than a lot of the guys in the AWA territory, so they stood out. But you had seen guys like the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express come through Memphis before, and they were working a similar style, respectfully, smaller guys, not huge lumbering guys, a faster pace. Did you say, hey man, I need more of that?
All right. We're going to go into the young, so before Simply Irresistible, I think it was the Golden Boy, Jeff Jarrett. We're going to go into actually fandom, Jeff. I was a junior in high school, and which would have been 84. And two guys walked in to one of my high school basketball games in full fur mink coats with my dad to watch a high school basketball game. Conrad, you talk about feeling uncomfortable. It was against one of our rivals. It was a packed high school gym. And here comes my dad, my stepmom, and Stan Lane and Steve Kern. They were working the territory, and maybe they had a Friday night off because I had gotten to meet them at the house. And so I'm saying all this to say they were the first tag team that I saw that were like megastars. I was obviously growing up, huge fan of Jackie Fargo, Jerry Lawler, the Lawler Dundee series, Dutch, Tojo, whatever it may be. But as far as like big box office attractions, I was a fan of the Fabs before above and beyond is what I'm saying, all teams. And as I know today, and you know today, they were good workers, but they weren't the Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson had a lot more fast pace. So in my mind, before I broke into business and as I broke into business, there were the Fabs, then they're the Rock and Roll Express. And I always looked at the Fantastics, although, man, when you go back and kind of watch some of their matches, it's off the charts. But as a teenage kid, they were a notch down considerably. And then, Bobby Eaton and Coco Ware and Norvell and Coco and we had a lot of tag teams around here. And so I looked at it because, again, this is pre-cable in my mind, different territories. I looked at, the Midnight Rockers. Wait a minute. Now, Midnight Express. Yeah, I can go with that. But wait a minute. Are they just kind of a hybrid so they're going to take half the name of the Midnight Express, and then you're going to kind of steal the Rock and Roll Express, and you're going to call yourself the Midnight Rockers? Now, come on, guys. Can we not come up with something a little more original? You see where I'm going with that, Conrad? Does that surprise you?
No.
Yeah, I just, it didn't sit right. That's my first impression. Then when they came into Memphis that first night and they're working against two giants, I was like, okay, let's see what they got here. And look, it was what it was. That I had to see them work kind of regularly. I remember seeing them work against the first time, and I don't want to get too far ahead, working with Rock and Roll Express. I went, oh, okay. These guys are not good. They're great. They are a whole nother gear and a whole nother level, especially Shawn.
He wrote, Shawn Michaels was a troubled youth. I don't think that's a surprise for a lot of our listeners. But when he's very early in his run, he's going through the territories and he's working Continental and he's not having a good time. And he's miserable and he thinks, hey, I'll amuse myself. And he wrote about this in his book that when a young girl seeking an autograph came over to Shawn Michaels, looking to give him some of that picture money, he autographed her photo with the inscription, well, I won't say what it was, but let's just say it wasn't complimentary. And he thought it was a joke. He's trying to amuse himself. Nobody else thought it was all that funny. All of a sudden, he's looking for a new place to go.
Can I stop you?
Yes.
I read that excerpt from the book, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm a betting man and I got to not go out on a limb, I'm just going to sort of throw the gauntlet down here. They wrote the book because I've obviously got some experience in all this. I'm going to be willing to bet a large sum of money, and I don't part with my money very often. I'm going to say Marty put him up to it.
No chance. No chance.
Oh, stop it.
No, I'm not making this up. I want you to type in your Google machine, and we'll have our producer, Dave Silva, do this for us. Just type in Shawn Michaels autographed and click image. On Google right now, go to google.com, throw it in your Google machine, type in Shawn Michaels autograph, and then click on Google image. Silva will find one. The first one that returned for me is an eBay listing for an autographed card. The second one is a shot of him holding the world title at WrestleMania 12. But one autograph after another from Shawn Michaels, what you see in common, and not a lot of people know this, Shawn Michaels draws a penis on every autograph he does. To this day, he signs with a penis.
I'm not debating that. I'm saying Marty whispered in his ear and said, hey, write this on there. I bet you won't.
Marty ain't in his ear when he's drawing dicks in 2024. He's having fun.
I know. Those two together, priceless. They taught me so much. It was a whole nother level of the business that it's oh boy. We got some stuff we can't share maybe for a live show one day, but oh boy. Anyway, go ahead.
When did you first, it sounds like you knew this. When did you first know that Shawn Michaels drew penises on his autographs?
I never knew that. Like today.
We'll take a look.
I'll be John Brown.
He's got enough. I mean, he's got more he can show you. I mean, I'm telling you, and by the way, I'm not mad about it. I think it's hilarious, but I'm just saying he clearly has that type of sense of humor. He draws a dick on every autograph. You don't know it unless you're looking for it. When you're looking for it,
it's
boy,
like it's like that there's been multiple posts. It's like the Amazon logo, but then when you look at the Starbucks logo, you can't unsee that. Things you can't unsee.
Like the arrow in the FedEx logo.
Arrow, Amazon, there's a few, but then you get, when you really do a deep dive, that Starbucks logo,
Well, I don't know what that means.
It's
worth a Google, huh?
Oh, it's worth a Google for sure.
Okay. Do I need a tinfoil hat for this one or no?
Oh, I'll throw you some carrots.
Okay. I love talking about this story because as crazy as this sounds, Bob Armstrong,
I love it.
He runs Continental. Now just tell everybody who Bob's son is.
Pep is the father of the James gang, affectionately known as Steve, Brad, Scott, and Brian Armstrong. Road dog, Jesse James.
So what's going to be one of your best friend's dad comes over to Shawn and Marty and says, well, that'll about do it here. So these guys are looking for somewhere else to work. And what do you know? It winds up being in Memphis.
But the whole kind of click of that story is that Shawn, this is where I guarantee you Marty's attached to it. Of all people for him to sign at the time, the territories were terrible and dying. They found him a buyer to buy part of the Continental Territory, or at least buy in and float it for a while. That little girl went to this potentially new owner and said, did you see what they put? Of course. So this is an introductory into a guy with money from the outside wanting to buy a business. And one of his illustrious television stars writes blankety, blankety, blank on the back of, let's move on. But can you imagine?
So Bob Armstrong says, hey, sorry, they're letting you guys go. Now, of course, he's talking about the Fuller territory. And so they're trying to give a 2 weeks notice, which is the way the business, hey, we're going to finish you up in 2 weeks. Because he wants to be able to let these guys go find another gig somewhere else, but go back to these potential investors and say, hey, taken care of, they're out of here. And of course, Shawn being Shawn in this state of mind says, we don't need 2 weeks. We quit now. So Shawn takes his sore ass over to Memphis, and that's where he meets your dad. Tell us about what you heard, if anything, about them coming in with this backstory. Did any of that trickle down, or do you learn about this years later?
Yeah, we learned about it years later. But what I had understood was, and to kind of give the business side of it, Conrad, which I don't even know that me and you've ever discussed this, but so Man, Cliff Notes version. 86 broke in, business was down. They brought Lawler back. We had a nice little run there for a little while. I break in. I go from playing college basketball. I'm going to go back to school. Nope. I'm going to work 7 days a week. So I'm grinding all this. And the house, the territory business was not rocking and rolling. Everybody knows where the WWF was at the time. The golden age of WWF was rocking and rolling. And really, WCW at this time, the NWA was doing okay. And so we were financially way down there. But my old man knew that Vern was getting up in age. They were, the AWA territory had run Denver and San Francisco, a long way from Minneapolis, but they had run Minneapolis, Chicago, in the Midwest. But their towns were down, talent was down. It was a struggle. But my dad started having conversations often with Vern, essentially either merging or talent sharing or combining, because at this time, Memphis's TV was still just incredibly strong in ratings. And so was Louisville, Kentucky, really good. Evansville ratings were always good to great. That people, the houses never clicked. Nashville was hit or miss because we would go from an ABC to a U station, ABC back and forth. Anyhow, but there was talk of kind of merging territories. And so when we did a couple of joint shows or shared talent, the houses popped. And so, the Kurt Hennig and Nick Bockwinkel, Nick was still champion in these days. There were a couple of different people. They had Randy Rose and Dennis Condrey. I mean, the AWA had some good talent. And for us to have the potential to kind of combine, like, all right, this is okay, there's going to be more money involved. And, at those times, I was trying to soak up everything I possibly could, not just listening in my old man's office, but on the road and the locker rooms and all this. And so to hear a Bill Dundee or a Dutch or others that were talking openly, yeah, this could be more money, an avenue here. And guys were, Eddie Gilbert, Dutch, Dundee, they were all either trying to go to WWE or WWF or WCW. So it was just literally a carousel of talent. So when I heard that Marty and Shawn were not coming in for a shot, but were moving in, I was like, damn, this is fantastic because they're really, really good. And at the time, our territory was filled with guys that were coming and going, but Vern sent us two guys that had only done a couple of jobs for them out of the Showboat Arena, but were, quote unquote, two kids that you would know, Connie, as Knobs and Sags, the Nasty Boys. They had come and they had moved to Nashville and they were a part of the territory. So to get an influx of Billy Travis, who was working there, Pat Tanaka, Paul Diamond, Midnight Rockers, Nasty Boys, it was kind of that. There was a bunch of us in there. I was excited because those guys, in my mind, the Rockers were stars already.
The Rockers are stars. They're going to be mega stars. They're just finding their voice here. It's funny what a small world wrestling is at times too, because when Shawn and Marty move into Memphis, it causes Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong to need to leave because, well, we got a new babyface tag team coming in. I just find it ironic that Bob Armstrong, who delivers the news about, hey guys, we got to finish you up here at Continental, the result of that conversation is his son has to leave where they're going now. What a small world this is.
Well, and kind of the story behind the story of all that was Tracy Smothers, local right outside of Nashville. Steve, obviously, as we've already stated, his home was Gulf Breeze, was Florida. And so they had 1 foot kind of in each territory. But at the time, the territory system just wasn't paying a lot. And so, my dad and the Bullet, they go way back. Bullet was in my dad's very first Memphis card, but they worked together late 60s, early 70s. So my dad's like, yeah, sure. I'll take Stevie up here because he had two other, at this time, Brian was in the Marines, but he had Brad, who I think was at WCW, and Scott. I'm not sure he was, but they didn't have room or this. And so my dad was happy to take Steve, but that's my dad happy to take him and Bob happy to send him. The reality is Steve would much rather be at his house with his wife and kids as opposed to up in Tennessee because the money was probably about the same. And Tracy was single too.
We start to see in 1988 Shawn develop a bit of a reputation. He even talks about it in his book where, he's wrestling in the morning for TV, doing the shots at night, but then staying up way too late, probably getting in way too much trouble, probably being a little too rambunctious with Marty in good and bad ways, maybe. But by January, it's even in the Observer. And this is hilarious to me. Here's the exact quote. I'm told Shawn Michaels is making a great heel, except it's no act. Did you have any experience with him here in 87, 88 you can share with us?
So it depends on what era, but I'm trying to take you back and let the listeners go back. I'm a young kid, obviously. So this is, what year is this, Conrad? 87.
It's the very end of 87, the very beginning of 88.
All right. I'm born in 67. So 87, I'm not even old enough to get in bars. So not only were they being a bad influence on the promoter's kid, but I'm underage. And so we had to do, I would go. So Friday night spot shows were within of about, 100, 150 miles of Memphis. But anyway, they were like, "Oh, you're going out with us tonight." And I'm like, no, I'm good. Oh no, they never took no for an answer. And then the Nasty Boys. And anyway, Conrad. So not only were we kind of breaking kayfabe because they're heels, or the Nasty Boys certainly were heels, and I'm a babyface, but they were, I'm telling you, Marty was like a homing pigeon for a nightclub. He always found water in holes. And hey, we're going here and we're going there. And he had, back in those days, there's no Uber. He had lines, car rides lined up and this and that. Oh boy, Conrad. But those guys, and I'm like, hey man, we've got TV. We've got to be there at whatever, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. We've got to go back. And so for the most part, I would be either the first ride. I'm going back. And bars in Memphis closed at 3. So 2:30, last call, whatever it is. I'm trying to go back. Buddy, Marty and Shawn, there was a run. They never came back to the hotel after closing time. They would always, it'd be daylight or whatever it was. So this story that goes in, because Eddie Gilbert, Missy Hyatt were in what a territory roster it was at this time. It was adventurous to say the least, Conrad.
It was ECW before ECW was ECW. It really was. Let's talk a little bit about your first match with Shawn. There's nothing about it in the Observer, but according to Cage Match, your first match with Shawn was January 25th, 1988, sometime during that week. I guess maybe it was January 30th. You're at the Nashville Fairgrounds. You're going to work to a draw. Any chance you remember your first match with Shawn at the Nashville Fairgrounds?
Like it was yesterday.
Really?
Conrad, and I'll tell you why. Let me think. There were, in my mind, it was my best match to date. I had some good matches with, Akio Sato taught me so much. So, I did the tag matches, and he taught me so much in the basics, and, I kind of working my way up through all that. But my first singles match that I felt like I held my own, but learned something, but really just had the people like going crazy. It was, and I'll here's why I won't forget it, because we did this match, we did a series of matches, and I don't know the Cage Match, I don't know what the date but they may not have it right, but I probably in my career, in this era, I bet I worked, I don't know, 10, 15, 10-minute draws. And there was a time after we had a second or third one that Frank Morrell, the referee's like, ain't nobody going to follow that the rest of the night. And he was like very complimentary of it, but it was because of the psychology in that, and again, I remember it, but as I look back on that and the little nuances that, again, Shawn had been a babyface to my knowledge in Louisiana, where he broke in. obviously down in Alabama, he up in Vern. He'd been essentially a babyface, but he was a young heel, which I find kind of ironic that first time he was a heel, I believe, was in Tennessee. First time Vince McMahon was a heel was in Tennessee. But Shawn's psychology on a 10-minute draw at this time, I'd never really been exposed to it, but it's certainly kind of the thread that he would build was he didn't wait till 8 or 9 minutes for the people to go, oh, wait, they're going to go Broadway. Because, the crowd knew, okay, they're wrestling twice, got to go out first in a single and come back in a tag, which we would do every night. But Shawn would have a match where the people literally thought, okay, we're going to go home at 4.5, 5 minutes. Quick little match, and it was action-packed and all that. Then the last 5 minutes, he just beat the hell out of me. And we both got over because I kept kicking out, and he kept getting more and more frustrated, and then him and the ref interaction. Anyway, I do remember Conrad. It was a great for a young Jeff Jarrett, the nuances and the things that I learned, invaluable. Oh man, invaluable. I mean, and Lawler was complimentary. It was a single match. It was a big deal for me that I wasn't in there with a vet like a Dundee or Lawler or whoever it may be, or or like I said in my early times, Akio Sato led me around the ring and everything. Me and Shawn went in there and a couple of those matches that he was running low on fumes and he could go or could go. It was a lot of fun, but an incredible learning experience too.
What do you remember of your subsequent time with Shawn in Memphis before he moves on? Anything else stand out to you about that period?
Our tag, no, I mean, he, of course I didn't digest it at the time like we would now. And my dad always taught me that like Jerry Lawler and Jim White were a team that drew a boatload of money in the Tennessee territory. Lawler was the star and the loudmouth and the boisterous, and Jim White was, I'll call it the straight guy, but he knew his role. I thought at an early age, and what I observed, I gave Marty as much credit as I did Shawn. The chemistry of their tag team was dynamic. Of course, Ricky and Robert had that on, but kind of the learning tree and watching the flamboyant, arrogant personality of Shawn, they drew money, I like to say day one, but they drew money and they had box office appeal. And I'll say this, with no story in Memphis. And I was like, okay, they came in and got over. And they never, the RPMs, they had a little bit of a storyline. The rock and roll was kind of a natural, but there were, I don't want to say there's a storyline because the rock and roll they were there first. Ricky Morton and Robert both had long-time roots in the territory. So when they came in and had a couple of matchups, which was cool, but the box office attraction of Shawn Michaels for me was very apparent day one.
Were you, listen, you're young in your career. You're trying to make it. You've been in the ring with this guy. You appreciate his work. You get it. And then you can't help, I'm sure, but see what happens when he joins the WWF. I mean, by 89, they're wrestling at WrestleMania. How's that feel? Or what's going through your mind when you're like, man, I wrestled that guy. Now he's in the big time. I mean, you had seen people around you like Randy Savage come through and go on to become a big star, and you hold him in high regard. But this is a guy you were actually in the ring with. Did seeing his success and you knowing that you shared the ring with him, did that make the success of the WWF and that level of achievement and accomplishment, did that feel within reach, more tangible when you see someone like Shawn do it?
So, boy, and I dealt with this years later because I'm a young kid. I wanted to travel. Obviously, I wanted the fame and notoriety, and I wanted the money and everything that kind of came with it. And I mean, Marty and Shawn came in. They were fantastic the first time I stepped in the ring with them. But Conrad, I also saw the Nasty Boys come in as just greener than goose shit. And they're up in the WWF. I saw Scott Steiner come in and, early in his career. And the next thing you know, he's teaming with his brother in WCW. I saw literally on a Thursday night, fly to Dallas, go to Chris Adams' wrestling school. Hey, Jeff and Jarrett, will you stop by the school? I want to introduce you. Okay, hey, I want you to introduce you to a guy named Steve Williams, later became Stone Cold. So I saw Steve right out of wrestling school. I saw, a guy named Cactus Jack Manson come to Tennessee. I mean, we could go through a list of talent. I mean, a long list of talent that would come in the territory, work anywhere from 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it may be. And they'd either go to WCW or WWF and not just be good, but like skyrocket up the card. And so, Conrad, it was, I had no idea at the time how it was really affecting me, because I have the ambition. I wanted to do it in so many ways, but just my old man, and I get it now. I truly, truly get it. I didn't so much at the time. He's like, man, when you step on a national stage, be ready. So in abundance of caution, my old man made sure, and also selfishly, he wanted to keep the territory going. And he was a guy that he knew I wasn't leaving. Everybody that came through there. I mean, Eddie Gilbert, his father was partners with Eddie Marlin for years, but he came in and he had his WCW run and ECW run, and he was in and out. Everybody, it was a carousel. But that was kind of the dog eat dog world of the business in the late 80s, trying to make more money in Tennessee. Wasn't a lot there, and it was tough, but my old man had to depend on. Lawler was part owner of the business, and I was, it was the family business. Didn't know any of it, but I was the son of promoter. So there was ups and downs. There was the yin and the yang of it, I guess you could say.
Let's talk about one more match you have with Shawn before the one that's on everybody's radar. It's January 8th, 1991. You're wrestling on an SWS show over in Japan. Tell us about this. The Rockers against Jeff Jarrett and a tag team partner, Mr. Sano. What can you tell us about that?
So, and help me out on the timeline, because we had, they go off and they're running. And again, so Tenryu had broke up, Japanese superstar had broke off from, trying to get what year this is, but they broke off from All Japan and started a company. And I was contacted because my old man was like, hey man, because I told him, I said, hey, I've gotten a call. They want me to come to Japan. He knew that he wasn't up for me going over there at 3 weeks at a time, and certainly not, 4 or 5 tours a year. But this was a startup company. And when I was first contacted, they were not affiliated with the WWF at the time. After I was contacted and things were starting to line up, because Bob Orton was affiliated, there were others that were, I'll call it Japanese stars. Bob was not affiliated with the WWF at the time. And so then Vince, we now modern, we talk about Forbidden Door and stuff like that, but Vince partnered with the SWS in Japan years ago. We're going to talk about in a few minutes, Conrad, the early days of the USWA WWF partnership, and me and Shawn had a series of matches then. But this SWS match, they wanted me to come over. They had big plans for me. I had gone to my old man, and I don't think I've shared this with you. That was a couple of conversations from a financial perspective that I had gone to him, and I said, hey, maybe I'm not gone 6 times a year, but maybe we figure out how to go 4 times a year, because they were going to pay good money. And then when they did the affiliation with WWF, I kind of knew the writing on the wall, and I was informed that, look, they're going to phase out any of the non-WWF talent. It's just going to be SWS, Tenryu and his crew as far as the Japanese talent, and then there's going to be WWF, because that was kind of where they wanted to go. But Sano was a guy that was, in those days, Jushin Liger, he was his rival. super talented, just super aggressive. And they brought me over and they had me beat him night one, first night over there, which I knew was a big deal, a really big deal.
Hey, not to correct you, but I was under the impression, and this is cage match, so it could be incorrect. But just so everybody knows, SWS stands for Super World of Sports. As Jeff said, they split off from All Japan Pro Wrestling. This happened in April of 1990. By October of 1990 is when the WWF affiliation begins. But there is an SWS tag team tournament, and it's going to be Tenryu and Kabuki getting a win over you and Bob Orton Jr. Does that sound familiar?
Unbelievable. And at the time, the hardest chop I'd ever taken with Tenryu lit my ass up.
Was that your first match in Japan like this?
Was the Sano match first, then the tag? I don't know.
I show that was the 18th, and the next day you went over Sano on the 19th.
Okay, then that I opened with a tag. But Conrad, it was so surreal. Looking back on little Jeff thinking about that, I fly over and I'm in the ring with
a guy who was in the main event of WrestleMania.
Okay.
That's who Bob Orton Jr. is. I know people think about him now as Randy Orton's dad, but WrestleMania 1, Bob Orton Jr. is in the ring in the main event with Hulk Hogan and Muhammad Ali and Mr. T and Roddy Piper. He's right in the mix. And now here you are halfway across the world getting chopped to death, tagging with this guy at early 20s. This is crazy.
And they had out of their mouth, hey man, we got big plans for you. We really want to build something as that. And they had talked about Sano before I got there, but opening night, I think what it was, but I just knew in my mindset, Tenryu's the boss. Okay. Yeah, whatever you want. He powerbombed me. He chopped me and all that. But Kabuki, in my early days, 87, 88, in the Akio Sato, Tarzan Goto, that feud, they brought Kabuki in as a special partner in the Green Mist and everything that went with that. So Conrad, as a young 22, 23-year-old kid, this was the biggest thing I'd done to date. It was huge to be a part of it.
By the way, that match you're talking about was back in August of 86 at the Mid-South Coliseum. It was Austin Idol, Pat Tanaka, and yourself against Sato, Goto, and Kabuki. And now here you are a few years later. As a reminder, this is October of 1990. Jeff works 2 shows here for SWS. He's back in January. He'll work on the 4th in a tag match. He'll work on the 6th with Sano. And then the last match that I think you wrestled for SWS is this tag.
Which sorry to cut you off. So we're kind of laying out. I've got my ass beat, scared to death. Bob Orton's my partner who screamed at me and kid this and kid that. And Tenryu, yes, sir. Chopped the shit out of you. Yeah. Oh yeah. Powerbomb. Yeah. Yep. I can do it. Yeah. All that. And then just kind of go along. But now, are you kidding me? It's me, Marty, and Shawn and Sano, who I had a single with and we'd had a good rapport with and all this. I was like, hell yeah. Conrad, I dove off the top. I did a crossbody off the top to the floor that night. So don't tell me I can't flippy floppy, but no, it was, I loved it. I was, it was a huge career highlight to date in those days. I'm, again, only been wrestling 3 or 4 years, and here I am on a big Japanese show, and the Midnight Rockers, who had a ton of respect for, their box office appeal, and Sano, and kind of knowing where he was at in his career is a huge deal for me.
Sano, as you mentioned, is really known to be Jushin Thunder Liger's top rival over in New Japan. I mean, he was considered to be one of the top 5 or 10 wrestlers in the world before he jumped to SWS. So you're getting some grade A experience here as a very young performer. Let's fast forward. Here's a report from The Torch. And this is August of 1992. And the most bizarre incident of the week, during the live USWA show in Memphis on Saturday, Jeff Jarrett talked about the WWF being in town the next night. He said he did not appreciate the WWF coming into his territory. Jarrett then claimed he would attend the WWF show because he's not afraid of them and promised to cause commotion. This seemed at first just to be another strange Jarrett interview where he went off on a tangent. Not so. According to our correspondent, Jarrett sat in the second row Sunday night in Memphis at the Pyramid for the WWF show. After one of the matches, Jarrett got out of his chair and climbed over the security railing. Jarrett was not making threatening movements. He just wanted the house mic, so as security scurried towards him, the ring announcer told security to let Jarrett say what he wanted. Jarrett repeated his complaints about the WWF being in town, the USWA's town, and said he was not scared of these WWF wrestlers. Then he said he'd like a shot at their intercontinental champion, Bret Hart, who was there that night. Jarrett then returned to his seat. Later, after Hart pinned Kamala in his title defense, Bret grabbed the microphone and accepted Jarrett's challenge and said he'd wrestle him the next time he was in town. Wow, this is a fun little angle that's not on TV. Is this all just relationship with Jerry and your dad? And this is a cool spot, man.
So roughly, when was the steroid trial?
This is this era, yeah.
But pretty much this year, right?
Yeah, 92, 93 is when it starts to get rolling.
Yeah, so, but that being said, this was the time frame of the Vince Jarrett
relationship. Yes,
just Sunday afternoon conversations that was completely under the radar, long before the evil McMahon was thought of, long before the working relationship with Men on a Mission and Well Done and Savage coming down and the Narcissist coming down. This was like in the era of the conversations and just their Sunday afternoon talks of whatever the hell they were talking about. But them coming in, them as in WWE coming into Memphis, this was one of those learning moments. And when I worked against Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden, and that, my old man encouraged Robert to help me with basically my interviews or the thought process to go behind the interviews. And folks, if you want to know different styles, go back and watch some old school Robert and Ron Fuller interviews. They told stories. You look at Mick Foley today and you can see threads, not Colonel Parker. I'm talking about Robert Fuller, either heel or babyface. There's always kind of a story. And so Robert would teach me about, hey, you got to kind of craft a story. And Lawler was brilliant at it and all this kind of stuff. But those were, in my mind, I hate to say scripted, but bullet pointed. And those were professional wrestling interviews. And my old man on this, I can remember him saying, son, but he would tell me he told me on this, hey, you just got to speak from the heart. And I'm like, I didn't say this. I know I thought it, but I didn't completely verbalize this in my brain. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do it. What are you talking about? And he's like, hey, I don't want to give you much on this, but you kind of have to kind of speak from the heart. And I said, give me some bullet points. So he kind of gave me some bullet points. And then it's funny or unique, shall I say, to hear, because in those days I didn't go read Meltzer's feedback, if you will, but that was something, and it caught the studio audience. I was, again, a touch point of learning to hear, because it was taboo. I'm going to mention the WWF coming to town, and I'm going to go down to the Pyramid. And look, yes, it's pro wrestling, it's scripted entertainment and all this, but it caught our fan base way off guard. Like, okay, this is different. And if you look in the notes, one of them, Meltzer Keller, they didn't know how to take it. They weren't real sure what was going on, because obviously they weren't privy to the Jarrett McMahon conversations or anything that was to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's even written in the torch. Oh, it's because Jerry and Jeff met with WWF officials. They don't know about these calls. Even, when Wade reaches out to Jerry Lawler, Lawler's like, I have no idea. I'm not involved in any of this. Of course, it turns out, USWA is going to become a bit of a feeder system. The matches were supposed to take place on October 31st or August 1st when the WWF was running the Pyramid again. We know ultimately those shows are canceled, but the match still happens, but instead of it happening at a WWF show, it happens at a USWA show. Let's talk about Shawn a little bit, though. He's going to have his first and only pre-WrestleMania match here in 1993 after his shoulder separation on March 29th in Memphis, defending the Intercontinental title against Jeff Jarrett. and it'll be the first time a WWF title is at stake on a USWA show. So it's a big deal. Yes. And of course, 1993 is right before WrestleMania 9. And you wrestled him before 5 years earlier, and now here he is doing his thing. Are you chomping at the bit to prove you've grown as a performer? Are you trying to impress Shawn, or is that not the way your brain was thinking at the time?
I wanted to go out for the Memphis crowd and tear the house down because, again, Shawn had left a Midnight Rocker and had, we didn't really touch on, they were WWF hired one day, fired literally the next, and Pat finally got them back in there. And then they had their tag team runs and then they did the, what was the talking segment? The Heartbreak Hotel set, and Marty and Shawn do the breakup and then the injury, and I may be jumping around here, but anyway, Shawn as a single coming to town, he was a big, mega WWF star at the time. So I can't say that I had it in my gut to impress him. I wanted to go out and tear the house down. That was my mindset.
Are you at all disappointed that the title shot happens against Brett? I mean, Shawn instead of Brett? I mean, I know that you had done this angle with Brett, but I know you hold Shawn in high regard. Was there any disappointment at all about not missing Brett, or are you just thrilled to be in there with Shawn?
I think from a business perspective, because of, look, and we didn't even touch on this, we're talking 92, 93, WWF house show business was not good.
No.
And they, and I say they, WWF and WCW, they always, pardon the language, shit the bed when they came to Memphis.
Yeah.
To the point that WWF said, we ain't going no more. We're not going to go take a bath at the Pyramid for nothing. We're done. So they had quit running there. Nashville had kind of got that way. Louisville had kind of got that way. They had much stronger markets. So when they weren't coming, obviously it put, okay, I get it. Brett's not going to come back around. And then the Sunday afternoon conversations that I began to hear bits and pieces. And then I heard, because I kind of thought, okay, that's gone by the wayside. That's going away. But when they worked out Shawn is going to come before he makes his return, it was freaking huge. Yes, I didn't have any second thoughts or have any mindset of, oh, damn, I didn't get to work with Brett. I would have liked to, but it was like, okay, we get to have this title match.
In the fall of 93 is where we're trying to spin up, the Shawn Michaels and Jerry Lawler thing, getting ready for Survivor Series. But we know that you don't really cross paths again with Shawn, at least in the ring, until the Royal Rumble match. Anything you want to share with us at all about, the Survivor Series stuff? Were you involved in any of that?
So you talking about 93 Survivor?
That's right.
Yeah. So my vignette started kind of in that fall October. And so, no, but I remember like when the decision was made and we shot the vignettes and Bruce and I got to be around him, which the first extended period, it was one of those things that out of the entire roster, and I'd probably have to have it in front of me, but I do remember the thoughts of, out of everybody that worked at the WWF at the time, I knew Shawn the best. Had run up and around the roads with him, partied with him, had matches with him, everything in between. And so, me getting up there, I'd met Scott Hall. He came to Tennessee, but we didn't make any trips together. Had never met Kevin because Kevin didn't do Memphis. And there were others, that were going to be, that were a part of the roster, but I didn't, I didn't in 93, and the picture showing there, that is the 94 Survivor Series. In 93, I had no, just getting started. So when I got to the WWF, I was pumped, and Shawn was like, By the time your ass got up here, one of those kind of conversations that we would have.
From what I understand, the Royal Rumble match is the January 94 match. That's the first time you guys are going to brush up against each other in the WWF. I guess right before we do the Royal Rumble, you guys did a show at Madison Square Garden, and you're going to have an opportunity to wrestle in Madison Square Garden for the first time just before the big Royal Rumble. I mean, in early 94, does it just feel like your career has been shot out of a cannon? I mean, to be in Madison Square Garden, to know you're going to be right up the road from Royal Rumble, you're going to be in that show. Are you starting to feel like you're a fish out of water because this is all new for you? Or do you feel like you've made it and you've arrived and you've got that confidence?
So, and are you talking about January of 94 MSG at Madison Square Garden show?
You did a Royal Rumble match there, like a warm up, I believe. And then 5 days later, the actual Royal Rumble pay-per-view.
In 94.
Yeah. That's Providence, Rhode Island.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Wow. I'm collecting.
So we were talking about Survivor Series 93, and I'm talking about 2 months later now in January of 94.
It's all running together.
Yeah.
But that would have been my first garden show.
Yes.
You can't put it into words of a guy, early 20s, who had watched the Manias, and I was a Knicks fan. Just to be a part of it is huge. So just to be a part of it, and I think I wrestled Doink.
No, you were in the Rumble match here at MSG.
Oh, is there a Rumble match?
Yeah. And you want to guess who won that Rumble match at Madison Square Garden, January 1994?
Shawn.
Owen Hart.
Get out of here.
Your first match in Madison Square Garden was won by Owen Hart in a Rumble match. How fun is that?
That is super cool.
Of course, the actual Rumble we know that year, the one on pay-per-view, is won by Brett and Lex Luger. The next time you're in the ring with Shawn, though, Silva had that graphic up there a moment ago. It's the bad guys and the Teamsters. We got ahead of ourselves. Survivor Series 94. What a cool little crew this is, man. I mean, you got just nothing but bona fide Hall of Famers here. Fatu, Razor Ramon, Sion, 1-2-3 Kid, British Bulldog. Then on the other side, Diesel, Jeff Jarrett, Jim Neidhart, Owen Hart, Shawn Michaels. This is a who's who. By the way, Sion is Barbarian. That's who we know him as. But you got a lot of talent here, man. And this is a down period for the company for sure. But now instead of standing across the ring from Shawn Michaels, you're in a tag team with Shawn Michaels. And if you're seeing what I'm seeing, it's you rubbing elbows with your best pal, Owen Hart, his relative, Jim Neidhart, and two foundational members of the clique, Kevin Nash and Shawn Michaels. They're going to become your big riding buddies. I know this is a dark period for the WWF, but when you look back at that graphic, it has to be nothing but fun memories for you.
But that was where I had, I worked against Kid, but I worked against Doink. This was hey, Jeff, this is Vince McMahon talking. We're going to give it about a year. We're going to get you out on the road. We're going to be working you on every show. We want you to learn this, learn that. And for the lack of a better word, just because I had known Shawn so well, but man, Scott, in a way, had it not been for Shawn's like, okay, because Shawn and Scott became tight in AWA. That's where I think they originally bonded. And then, Scott had gone off and done his diamond stud at WCW, and then he'd got the razor gimmick. So when I got there, in a lot of ways, it was Scott and Shawn and Kevin. And Kevin was still, I don't say new to the business, but he hadn't been around long, and he was the bodyguard. But that entire year of 94, and Owen in those days, he was riding with, his family, Brett and Jim, mainly Jim, and any other free rides he could figure out. So that whole year was a learning tree. We had a blast. Me getting out on the road and learning. That was the year, I'll say this, that I learned the nuances of how you do it at the WWF. And I got to give Shawn and Scott, Kevin as well, but really Shawn and Scott sat under their learning tree, sat in the car rides, and heard little bits and pieces, and asked the questions, and we would do something, and then the next night, because everybody watched each other's matches. Just man, it was a different environment. Obviously, a lot of house shows, but long before me and Scott started working together, he would watch a match and say, "Hey, man, try this or try that." Same with Shawn. And we all car rides. So yeah, that 94 entire year was the learning tree and understanding and just trying to be a sponge. But man, blast it was.
Talking about that Survivor Series match, along with us here as part of our live studio audience, Eric Jones says, I hated it in 1994, but now at 45, I'm like, holy cow, it's all Hall of Famers. And I think all of us, with the benefit of hindsight, see some things that maybe we didn't see the first time. And maybe there's no better example of that than when you and I first started this podcast. I was busting your balls pretty regular about you saying that you're an unofficial member of the clique. I take a look at March of 95 and it is filled. I feel like every show that the company ran in March of 95, it was Diesel and Razor in a tag team affair taking on Jeff Jarrett and Shawn Michaels. Y'all did it in Phoenix. You did it in Denver. You did it in Anaheim, Stockton, Fresno, Ontario, Thunder Bay, Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, New York City, New York, Madison Square Garden, Boston, Massachusetts, Detroit, San Antonio, Landover. I mean, you're all over the country in this in high gear tour. And now you're back working with really the top of the card in Madison Square Garden. It's not a 60-man battle royal or whatever. It's a tag team with just littered with gold. This has got to be a big time for your career as far as feeling accomplished. But again, it's a down period. It's March of 95. Are you disappointed in the payoffs or the politics or the road or the travel? Is any of that getting to you?
And that's where the payoffs, look, I listened to other guys and, Shawn, he'd probably self-admit he wasn't happy with anything financially during this era, but no, I would hear Scott and I'm the rookie around. I certainly didn't bitch. I just kind of took it all in stride. But as I sit here today and you named all those cities, I look back and know that. So better part or all of 94, all the different opponents I had that I was going out and a multitude of opponents, and they would, back in those days, the agents would get done with the show. They'd go to a payphone and they would give a verbal report of the show. And then I'm sure Bruce has told you all about this. And then they would have somebody, what do you call that? That dictate it. They would write it out. And so Bruce and Pat and Vince would get the show reports and this and that. And as time went along, and obviously, the moving of the chess pieces, but when Scott, and I don't know, chicken or egg, what is either he suggested it or they came to him. But when Scott said, yeah, I'd like to work with Jeff at Royal Rumble 95, him being the Intercontinental Champion, that took my career, and I've said that on earlier episodes, it took my career to another level, without question. And then, yes, the 93 house show business, 94 house show business, just during that era, coming out, when history, I think, tells, and the further and further we get away from it, it was the transition period from the golden age or golden era of WWF, and I call it the Hulkamania run, then the steroid trial and boatloads of bad press. And so we were scratching and clawing and rebuilding, and Brett was a completely different champion than Hulk was, and the in-ring product was more important. The match quality was more important, all that. And when you kind of look at the building blocks, and then 95, I win the IC title from Scott. They had, and I think we're kind of skipping over a little part here, that out of that era, during this whole kind of transition, Diesel became world heavyweight champion. It went from Brett to Bob Backlund, and Bob Backlund Diesel beat him in 10 seconds in the Garden or 12 seconds on the Garden, Kevin called the office and said, "Hey, Vince, I appreciate it, but me going around the horn with Brett, with Bob Backlund, and Bob Backlund putting me over on all these house show loops, that ain't good for me or good for the card. I think we gotta move somebody in that slot." And he kind of said, "Well," and the car's kind of talking, "What about Double J?" And so when I look at that and knowing everything going on I don't think Vince would have gone for it just off of Kevin's word. Vince and Shawn always had a unique relationship. And I think Vince sure went to Shawn and went to Scott and said, "Hey, what do you think? Yeah, this will fit." And so them putting me in that role of putting Kevin over every night was another notch of, we did it multiple places around the loop. I took Bob Backlund's place. Again, I know it's a Shawn Michaels episode, but this ties deeply to me and Shawn's relationship, that Shawn gave a vote of confidence. And then when it came time to ramp up to Mania, it was Scott and me in a rematch at WrestleMania, and Kevin and Shawn in their match at Mania. And so they decided to do this tag. And I remember Jack Lanza, Chief Strongbow. There were other agents, the Hebners, of course, when we started hearing the numbers financially. Oh, wow, this house is up here. Oh, wow, Anaheim did a bump. Phoenix did a bump, just whatever the cards were. And so the bumps in houses, it was, I know that the four of us were like, all right, we're things are headed in the right direction, if you will. And that was satisfying. At that stage of my career, I was damn proud of it.
I want to talk about WrestleMania because this is a big WrestleMania that we're headed to in 95 as far as your sphere of influence. You mentioned Diesel's the champ. He's going to be defending against Shawn Michaels. They're running it in Hartford. So New York's getting a lot of that PR and publicity. So the result is when you're doing this tag match that I sort of glossed over, it was a big time tag match. Because remember now, the main event of WrestleMania in like less than 2 weeks is Shawn Michaels versus Diesel for the world title. Now we're going to have those guys standing across each other in a tag affair. Razor is going to be teaming with Diesel. You're teaming with Shawn. The result is an estimated 18,000 people at MSG. They hadn't done anywhere near that in a long time. They'd been hovering like 10, and if they hit 12, it was considered a high five. But the Torch and the Observer both got reports that this match was incredible. You guys went more than 30 minutes, lots of critical acclaim. People are really digging this match. And on some level, this feels almost like the definition of new generation. You got four young guys in a main event, a badass tag match that goes half an hour. No disrespect, but this is not Hulk Hogan and Kamala back in the day.
That's right.
When you hear, "Hey man, the house is through the roof," is there a sense of pride in that you're involved in the mix of the main event, the big time, the world champs here? We're days away from WrestleMania. And somehow here I am, not wrestling Shawn, but tagging with Shawn. That's pretty fucking cool, man.
Buddy, one of the coolest moments of this Garden experience, Dr. Tom Pritchard, when the match was over, he said, and me and Tom, old buds, rode up down the roads in Tennessee, and I mean, we could tell funny after story, but there was, but Shawn, Dr. Tom's like, "Jeff, buddy, we're buds, but damn, that may be the best tag match I've ever seen." Just like lots of folks complimentary around the horn. The agents were putting it over, and every night we would try to add a new wrinkle into it. And I cannot, and I've said this many times on other podcasts, when you put arguably maybe one of the most talented of all five of us, as far as charisma, Road Dogg as the second, that was the chemistry of all five of it. And I really cannot say enough about this series of tag matches. I think from a tag team perspective, it was the body of it. And me and Owen had some fantastic tag matches, but kind of with younger guys. But I kind of feel like this series, all four of us at this time, were, I'll call it at least seasoned it just tore the house down. But Conrad, here's kind of the cool little thing, and we knew the payoff was okay. It's gonna be up, and the houses. That's what I'm saying is we were running Pittsburgh, I think every 90 days, and so the different houses around the country were popping. They were coming up. They were coming up. But when we got to the Garden that night, and everybody, okay, it's good. It's not good. It's great. And all this. But Kevin and Shawn, I think it was them. They came in and said, "Hey, stop by Vince's office or whatever it is." But this is 2 hours before show or 90 minutes, and Vince said something to the effect of, "Hey, man, going to be a big night and all this. Can you go out to dinner with us after the show?" Oh, yeah, Vince, I think I can. And Smith and Walensky. And that's when I knew that, okay, Vince is happy about this house. But it was, that was kind of the, another level, another arrival point, of being at a MSG, the home of WWF at the time, a really good house that hadn't been that way in a while, going out to dinner with the boss. And Conrad, that's the first time that I'd ever tasted scotch.
Scotch.
That's what he drank. That's what the boss drank.
Let's
It wasn't a silver bullet, pal. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. Let's remind everybody, after WrestleMania that year, Shawn's going to turn when his bodyguard Sid attacks him, and he's going to start this babyface turn. So now Shawn's been this big badass heel. We're going to start turning him babyface. And from here, we're going to set up a match with you guys. We know we're marching towards In Your House in Nashville. It makes sense. You're the world's greatest singer, blah, blah, blah. So there's going to be some stuff with the roadie. Now, before we get into the actual match itself, because I do want to talk about that, there was an ad that came out that has all the merchandise that the WWE is going to be selling. And normally, as you may imagine, it's all baby faces. There's one heel in that catalog who has merch for sale, and it's Double J, Jeff Jarrett. And that leads the torch to maybe guess, hey, does that mean Jeff Jarrett might be turning babyface? Is Double J going to become a babyface character? That would have been hard to imagine, but it is sort of weird and random that there's a heel with merch. Now, I know I'm skipping ahead here, but do you believe in an alternate universe that would have been the plan? Had everything in Your House not happened the way it did? Because it's a head scratcher that you had merch as a heel.
Conrad, in 2024, one thing has become even more clear that my dad used to try to tell me: son, never produce yourself. Never. Always have folks that are going to help produce you or produce you. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but not tongue in cheek, because in that time frame, it's the furthest thing. But here's what I am well aware of: Vince, Bruce, and Pat, they love, that's a strong word, but yeah, they really liked the Double J character, the spelling of the name, and the ha-ha that came from a hey, be irritated, and what just kind of the Double J isms, all that. I knew they liked it. When we would get to TVs and they were producing me, I knew there was a lot of things that just fit the WWF model. And so the "Ain't I Great" slogan, the catchphrase, worked. They liked easy catchphrase. But Conrad, I don't think they ever had plans. And I don't think they fall. I mean, they're forward thinkers and think down the line. But as we know, the plan was always going to be Rhodey come out as the real singer and have the babyface run. I just think that they saw the Double J character as marketable. They saw Razor Ramon as a heel against Randy Savage as marketable. I think obviously the Shawn Michaels play, when Brett got rolling and the European, and we had the strong German TV and the good houses over there. And when you kind of look at the year 94 and all the international travel that we did, and Brett was front and center as the champion, and it was a 180 from the Hulk Hogan style of wrestling and the Hulk Hogan style of promos. And Brett was best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, all that. I think in Vince's mind, well, I know in Vince's mind, when he looked at this new generation era, okay, I'm going to go from Brett. And I think the backroom thing was a segue, no matter how you looked at it. I think he had on his eyes, I'm going to now go with Shawn. And so I just think, me being in the one of the only heel in merch, I think they just looked at it as a marketing campaign. Again, I'll go back to the "Ain't I Great" kind of catchphrase. That there was a merch folks liked it. It was easy to hate, if you will. It was marketable.
I just love this era of WWF. I mean, I wasn't even watching at the time, but to go back and piece it all together is really, really fun for me. There's a lot of other stuff I want to talk about in this era, but we know that we're building towards an incredible match. You've said many times here on the show before, this is your favorite match of your career. And it was you and Shawn Michaels in Nashville and in your house. It was written about in the Observer and the Torch like it was almost a foregone conclusion that you were going to drop the Intercontinental title that night. And people have started to piece it all together in years past. And they've seen an interview you did with Chet Kopic a few days ahead of the pay-per-view. And you're actually talking about how burnt out you are. I know you spent a lot of time traveling with Shawn. Did Shawn know before the match that you were walking out after?
Nothing. And I didn't know until really that day. I mean, I had feeling, and look, I'll say it in my sobriety. Me and Karen had a discussion the other day, and I had said something to the effect that I hope I continue, because I know I've made strides in continuing to become a better listener. But if I would have listened to what I said, the Chet Kopic, I remember doing the interview, and kind of the unfiltered part of Jeff was, because Conrad, and look, it's, hey, Jeff, you signed up for it, but we were 10 on, 3 off, 4 on, 3 off. What was the schedule in those days? It's just how the schedule was. And then on top of that, I was IC champ starting in January. And so appearances, they knew that I could do on sales. It's funny, the Pittsburgh SummerSlam that I never was out because I walked out, I did the on sale for that. So in those days, video games and on sales, and I was just a constant grind. I didn't realize it, but man, at the old proverbial, I was running myself in the ground, burning out. But no, the answer to your question is Shawn didn't know. Brian didn't even really know. He didn't even really digest it until in the ring. I mean, he knew, but like, okay, he would have been there when I didn't get up and finish executing the story. He's like, I'm out with you, brother. And he said that. Said, fuck it. Oh, excuse me. He said, we're out.
No, don't excuse me. You can say whatever you want, because I just want to remind everybody that Shawn Michaels, we established this very early on in this program. Whenever he signs an autograph, he's prone to draw a big old wiener. And if you'd like a big old wiener of yourself, you can draw one over at bluechew.com. That's right. This sponsor needs no introduction. You've seen the ads. You've heard us talk about it a million times. And I bet there's a big part of you, pun intended, that wants to try it. Of course, we're talking about Blue Chew. It's not your grandpa's pill. This is the one. It's the OG chewable tablet for better sex. Blue Chew's unique online service that delivers you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple, too. You sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all online. That means you don't have to go to the doctor's office. There's no uncomfortable conversations. There's not even any waiting in line at the pharmacy. You see, Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA and prepared, shipped, and directly to your door. How about that? Take these dudes anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Hit your stroke, Daddy. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at bluechew.com. Just tell them like JR does. Honey, just back up into it. Blue Chew wants the entire country rock hard. That's what they told me. That's the mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, until every tent is pitched, until every rod is raised. Discover your options at bluechew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com. The promo code is MyWorld, and you'll receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast.
Stiff.
The match itself, it's an incredible match. They go 20 minutes and 1 second. Shawn does win the Intercontinental Championship. You're that mean, dirty, nasty heel. He is our new babyface. Fun fact, Tony Schiavone and I are watching this pay-per-view, including this match, tomorrow on What Happened When. So if you haven't seen this match in a while, watch or listen to Tony's podcast tomorrow and watch along with us. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. You've had so many great matches since. Why do you think this what stands out above all the rest to you?
I think the lowest hanging fruit here and the most obvious was the Jeff and Brian, Double J and Rhodey chemistry clicked immediately, in my opinion. We started in January on a Monday Night Raw, worked with Davey Boy, and then won the title against Razor at Rumble in January, and then those tag matches, and then all of a sudden, wow, this single comes out. This artist has been talking smack since the end of 93, all of 94, into 95. And he comes out with this single, and I'll be damned, it's actually pretty good. And just kind of that whole vibe of long-term, not storytelling, but character building. And then you have Shawn on the other side, that he had his bodyguard and Diesel, and then they had their run in, and then the split, and then super charismatic. And I just think the two characters were over is kind of the easiest baseline. And when you put, the Eastern Conference versus the Western Conference, they hadn't played any, but they're both kind of champions going into to the match. I also think that for the most part, I know on the other channel, WCW, that they and maybe some ECW, they were getting, but on a national stage, there wasn't a ton. I'm not going to discredit, because when I can think off the top of my head, Brett matches, Davey Boy matches, Kurt Hennig matches, but Jeff and Shawn was maybe, like you said, a definitive new generation match, going to be different. And Shawn's he's freaking fantastic. And I think we both came ready with our A game. We were seasoned, and we talked about this. We'd known each other at this point now 10 years and worked quite a bit together. We knew each other like the back of our hand. And like I said, characters, we came ready. The story was there. This is the early days of In Your House. So that both companies had just gone to monthly pay-per-views. So on a 2-hour pay-per-view, there was laser focused on, all right, out of 5-6 matches on a 2-hour pay-per-view. I think a lot of things were just rolling in our direction, and we delivered. I think, humbly, I think we delivered.
I don't think you have to worry about saying humbly. I mean, my goodness, this is critical praise. Meltzer even said, I've seen plenty of better WWF and WCW pay-per-view shows that didn't get anywhere near the level of positive response this show got. I'm not sure if it's an indication of decreasing expectations and thus one outstanding match, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people thought this was the best pay-per-view of the year. Shawn Michaels and Jeff Jarrett was easily the best work pay-per-view match thus far in 1995. And he would go on and make other comparisons. But even Wade would say, this is a notch above 2 strong WCW matches at the Great American Bash and a definite match of the year candidate in the United States. Jarrett moved his rep up a notch with this one. Michaels further solidified his rep as being the best worker in the U.S. Had the match gone 3 minutes longer after the ref bump, it would have been a quarter star higher. Like, I know that you're proud of this match, and I know that immediately after, man, it's time to handle business and take a stand and do some difficult things. But after the match, do you remember thinking, man, in an alternate universe, I would have liked to have done this or that? I mean, I know that like Bryan Danielson has done interviews where he's very critical of watching his old stuff and says he can't do it. Were you thrilled with this match, or did you afterwards say, wish I would have done XYZ?
Me and Shawn have had this conversation, and we were both, we did a watch along at WWE a couple of years ago on, maybe that would have been the 20th anniversary. I don't know, some anniversary, doesn't matter. But here's kind of two old vets sitting around talking about it, but we knew it at the time. And Conrad, you'll be able to relate to this. And I don't know any other way to say this, though. This match wasn't anywhere close to a storyline blow-off match. Not anywhere close. I mean, it is our first matchup. It's not like we did this angle on TV where the Roadie and Jeff beat the hell out of Shawn Michaels and put him on the, you know what I'm saying? This was, I don't want to say thrown together, but this was a transitional title switch. Like, end of story. We don't need to say any more. The plan was Jeff and Roadie are going to go do their personal storyline, and Shawn is going to head down and he's going to go recreate some magic at SummerSlam with Razor Ramon, and Kevin's going to go on his way. So it was a in your house, the second one ever, just kind of a transitional. So when I look back and like, oh man, Jeff and Shawn tore the house down, I'd like to say, can you imagine if we'd really built a storyline arc, and maybe the next one I win and then we have the rubber match? Like, really built, and me and Shawn have had that discussion, and we both knew it wasn't any blow off angle storyline match, and that makes a difference in a performance.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it just, when you make it for all the marbles on the table, not that the IC title wasn't on the line, but again, it was a transitional title switch, and man, so regret, the regret I may have is, can you imagine what we could have done with a real blow-off match?
It's unbelievable to think about what could have been, and I can't wait for us to explore that a little more some other time in the future. I'm also looking forward to talking about when you're there in late 97, there's a circumstance where Shawn Michaels, creates a little chaos in Little Rock, Arkansas, and we'll talk about that another time, because I want to do a deep dive on that, because I know that this is not a story that we can just gloss over. There's so much that's been written about this, like tear gas and riots and crazy stuff. I mean, smoke bombs. There's all this rumor and innuendo. What really happened? We'll talk about that as a standalone event.
It, Conrad, and I know we'll kind of wrap this episode up, but the Easter eggs in that riot in Memphis and in Little Rock, I believe, is a byproduct of the NWO.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the questions that we got, and then we'll put a bow on this week's episode. We got a bunch of questions. We'll hit a few here. Coach Keith wants to know, what did you like better, babyface rockers or heel rockers?
Oh man, it depends on what era, but heel rockers. Whew, what could have been? What could have been in WWF? What could have been?
Johnny Sanders wants to know, what's something that Shawn Michaels taught you? Is there one thing that you can say, boy, I learned that from Shawn? Well,
and again, the 10-minute time limit draw psychology, which you can extrapolate out to any different thing, is he was, I don't say he specifically taught me the gear shifting of those, but there were some nuances as a territory wrestler during this time frame on a 10-minute draw, when you have an old-time ref kind of come up to both of you guys and say, hey, man, you guys were on second tonight. Ain't nobody following that. That was a good feeling. And Shawn taught me all that.
82 Atlantic wants to know, did Jeff and Shawn ever talk about the VKM DX skits?
Refresh the VKM DX.
So you guys had an angle in TNA with your buddy Brian, and he was calling himself VKM, the Voodoo Kin Mafia. Yep. They were doing skits where they were trolling WWE. They were trolling DX with Shawn and Hunter.
Yeah.
And y'all were all boys, but now from the outside looking in, people are wondering whether hurt feelings, has that ever been discussed?
No, I never discussed. And I'm sure there was no hurt feelings.
Joseph wants to know, knowing how the reputation of Shawn was in the 90s, allegedly, how cool is it that he's grown up and is giving back to the business with running NXT? I mean, that's kind of full circle for him, is it not?
And I can relate to a lot of it. The I'll call it the valleys, the low points, if you will, the learning situations, however you want to paint it. It's what's made Shawn who he is today, because he can look a young talent in the eye and say, hey man, I ain't BSing. Let me give you this example that I did in 1988 in Birmingham, Alabama, when a guy's trying to sell his territory. Don't be this stupid like I was. I mean, he literally is using all of his quote unquote failures to give strength to others.
I love it. I think that in a nutshell is Jeff Jarrett. I mean, that's what you do in your real private life every single day. It's why we record at 10:45 every day. We're going to talk about 1987 next week here on the program.
Oh boy, saddle up, Connie.
Golly. I mean, we're talking forever ago. But before we do, one last question from Mike. What was your reaction to the curtain call incident, given how entrenched you are in the industry? And did you think it was in any way disrespectful to the business?
I have always thought that the overthinking of disrespectful way to the business, wait a minute, these guys are leaving. So it kind of opened up a whole nother avenue. Because I'm grateful that I come from a long line of, and I've been around Eddie Crawford, Snowman, and WCCW, and Puerto Rico, and Tennessee stories, and all this kind of stuff. It was all out in front of the open that you go, now wait a minute. I just think wrestling hardcore fans read so much more into it than the paying customer that it was a lightning rod of discussion, but at the end of the day, it was moved on, and a set of circumstances that by the next Garden show, I think Triple H remembered it because of certain situations, but the fans had moved on immediately.
Well, we're going to be moving on to talk about 1987 next week here on the program. Greatly appreciate everybody tuning in today. I want to mention, if you want to keep in touch with the show, it's easy to do. Our social handles are all over the place. Hit us up. We'd love to have you take a look at My World Pod on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Of course, your home for all things Double J is myworldpod.com. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell so you'll know the next time we're live. If you just can't get enough Double J, I want to remind you one last time, there's tons of bonus content, more than you can shake a stick at, over at AdFreeShows.com, including just 2 nights from now, as you're listening to this, Ben Bishop and Double J live. This guy, he's setting the internet on fire. He's figured out social media, and Jeff Jarrett has been preaching from the pulpit for years about that being the most effective way to get noticed in pro wrestling. It'll be a whole conversation that you can participate in this Thursday at adfreeshows.com. And of course, tomorrow night, we're going to hear from Brian Danielson, a person that Jeff Jarrett holds in really, really high regard. He says he has the most admiration for his game than anybody else in the sport right now. He talked about the crossroads Brian's at. We're just weeks away from Wembley. Lots of questions will be answered tomorrow night at AEWTIX.com. Pick up your tickets now if you haven't already. Go see The Last Outlaw in person, or do what I'm doing. And man, tune in and watch Dynamite. It's going to be a big week, man. We're home stretching it for Wembley. Are you nervous, anxious, excited? What do you expect this week on AEW TV?
Countdown is on. I am super excited, but we have Greenville first. So got to block and tackle, my man. We'll get there when we get there.
And we'll see you guys next week right here on My World.
Peace.
SaveWithConrad.com.
I'm Nick Castillo from Waterville, Ohio. I've listened to several of his podcasts for a few years and have always heard the ads for Save with Conrad. And my wife and I were looking to refinance, and we had looked into a couple different options. And then I had remembered one of the ads and contacted you guys, and here we are. We had some debt that we accumulated, and we wanted to pay it down, get everything in under a much better, more manageable APR. So smooth. I've never had anything finance go that easy. We got a chance to work with Francis and Larry. They made everything comfortable. They were very personable. They were on top of everything. They made sure we were on top of everything. They were with us every step of the way, kind of guiding us. So like I said, I've never had an experience that went that smooth. Right off the bat, we saved at least $250 a month. Within a couple of months, we'll probably be at the 400 to 500 mark a month. I'm Nick Castillo from Waterville, Ohio, and I've saved over $400 a month with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender, SaveWithConrad.com.